Hello and welcome back, and everybody, Levi here, and today I got a brand new deck tag here for you for a pretty interesting commander out of Ixalan. It was from one of the commander decks. It's Xavier Sal, Infested Captain, black, a green, and a blue for a 3/3 human fungus pirate. Quite interesting creature types if you ask me. The first ability says you tap it, remove a counter from another permanent you control, and you get to populate. That's not the one we're really going to be focusing on. The second one's the one we like here. Tap, sacrifice another creature, and then you proliferate, obviously only as a sorcery as well. So what I thought for this deck is try to make a budget planeswalker deck, because there's not a lot of planeswalker decks that I have found that can be built on a budget and still be pretty viable. So I started going through some of the planeswalkers that are sub $2, and a lot of them actually do create their own tokens, which then feeds into our commander's ability, which then makes the planeswalkers even better because you can proliferate and then get to their ultimates a little bit faster. So I'll go over some of the planeswalkers that I have in the deck that are making tokens. First up, Garrick, Cursed Huntsman, 4 a black and a green for a 5 loyalty planeswalker, has 0. Create 2/2/2 black and green wolf creature tokens with when this creature dies, put a loyalty counter on each Garrick you control, which is quite relevant seeing as how we have 4 Garricks in the deck. So that one is actually going to be really strong to have, especially if you have some of the other ones already out. The -3, destroy target creature, draw a card, obviously always good. Removal and card draw on that -3, which you can do right away if you choose to. The -6 is you get an emblem with creatures you control get +3/+3.5 trample. That's always decent. You're in a token deck, so you could end up swinging out with your tokens to end the game that way. Next up, I got Garrick, Primal Hunter, 2 green, green, green. So that one's a little bit harder to cast, but seeing as how we're in green, it shouldn't be that hard to get those green pips. 3 loyalty planeswalker, create a 3/3 green beast creature token on the +1. The -3 is draw cards equal to the greatest power among creatures you control, also really strong. And the -6 is create a 6/6 green worm creature token for each land you control. That obviously later in the game is going to be really helpful for us, especially if we can get something out to double the counters real quick, and then you just -6 right away, so this doesn't end up getting removed. Next one, I got Kasmina, Enigmatic Mentor, 3 and a blue for a 5 loyalty planeswalker, has a passive ability, spells your opponent's cast that target a creature or planeswalker you control, cost 2 more to cast. Just on its own, that ability is fantastic protection for some of our planeswalkers and even our creatures. But the -2 says create a 2/2 blue wizard creature token, and you draw a card, then discard a card. So obviously these ones that have extra advantages, such as the basically ward 2 on your creatures and planeswalkers, as well as creating a token and you get to loot. So just super good value on a creature like this, especially because considering they made this thinking that you're not going to be able to put more counters on it because it doesn't have a plus ability. But when you have Proliferate in your deck, you can get those counters back up and keep using this as many times as you can. Another great one here, this one has the token on the minus, which isn't as good, but it's still a really strong planeswalker here. Nixus of the Black Oath, 3 black for a 3 loyalty planeswalker, +2. Each opponent loses 1 life. You gain life equal to the life lost this way. So if you end up having to take a lot of life a little bit later in the game and you need some life gain, that could be helpful. But also has the -2, create a 5/5 black demon creature token with flying, and then you lose 2 life, which is really strong because you want to be able to get those flyers in that are trying to attack your planeswalker. So having a flying or reach blocker is really strong. Also the -8, you get an emblem with, you can pay 1 and a black to sacrifice another creature, and you gain X life and draw X cards, where X is a sacrifice creature's power. This one pairs really well with, you know, like the Primal Hunter Garrick, because it gives you those 6/6s. So if you have both the ults out, I know it's a bit of a long shot to get 2 ults off, but hey, you never know. In a deck like this, when you have so much Proliferate, I think that you can kind of count on that to get the ultimates for your planeswalkers quite often, I think. So you make the 6/6s with your Garrick, and then you can sacrifice any amount of them if you want per 2 mana that you have to draw a bunch of cards, gain a bunch of life. So I like that one a lot. Next up, Taset, Artifice Master, 3 blue for a 5 loyalty planeswalker, the +1. Create a 1/1 colorless Thopter artifact creature token with flying. Again, you want those flyers, and it's on the plus, which is really nice to be able to block for your planeswalkers. The 0 is draw a card. If you control 3 or more artifacts, draw 2 cards instead. That kind of plays in with the first one. If you make a couple Thopters, then you can 0 it and then draw 2 cards instead. The -9 is a really cool one. You get an emblem with, at the beginning of your end step, search your library for a permanent card, put it onto the battlefield, then shuffle. That's basically any of our planeswalkers that we want. It's a little tutor on a ultimate of our Taset there. But aside from just getting the tokens from our planeswalkers to sacrifice them to our commander, there's also other ways to proliferate if our commander happens to die several times. So green and blue, obviously the best colors for proliferating. Obviously we got cards like Evolution Sage, 2 and a green for a 3/2 elf druid. With landfall, it says whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, you proliferate. So pretty standard in a proliferate deck in green. Anytime you ramp, land ramp, anything like that, you're going to be proliferating all your planeswalkers and other counters that you might have. Another one, Flux Channeler, 2 and a blue for a 2/2 human wizard. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, proliferate. So whenever you're casting your planeswalkers, you're going to be proliferating your other planeswalkers. Unfortunately, you won't hit the one that you cast right then because it's on the stack. However, it's just so strong. Every time you cast something that's not a creature, which we don't have too many creatures, we're going to be getting that proliferate on all of our planeswalkers. Then besides proliferating, we do have some untappers in the deck. Kiora, Master of the Depths, 2 green and a blue for a 4 loyalty planeswalker, +1, untap up to 1 target creature and up to 1 target land. So this is a little bit better than some of the other untappers. Some of them just untap 1 permanent. This one taps a creature and a land, so untap our commander after we already use the ability, and we get to untap a land for a little bit of pseudo ramp. The -2, reveal the top 4 cards of your library. You may put a creature card and or a land card from among them into your hand, put the rest into your graveyard. So the graveyard thing's not too great because we don't have too much recursion, but we have some in the deck, so it's not that big of a deal. -8, you get an emblem with whenever a creature enters the battlefield under your control, you may have it fight target creature, then put 3 8/8 blue octopus creature tokens onto the battlefield. Yeah, I don't think anybody's going to be attacking your planeswalkers with 3 big ol' 8/8s on the field, and it shouldn't be that hard to get that out, especially with some of our other proliferate cards. Next up, an all-star in any proliferate deck, Tekkathal, Inquiry Dominus, 2 blue for a 3/5 Phyrexian horror with flying. Also great because it has flying because it can protect your walkers. If you would proliferate twice instead. That's just twice as good value on our commander. That's fantastic. Also, you can pay 1 and Phyrexian blue, so that's either 4 life or blue, however way you want to spin that. Remove 3 counters from among other artifacts, creatures, and planeswalkers you control. Put an indestructible counter on Tekkathal, Inquiry Dominus. So say somebody's going to board wipe on your planeswalkers and they're going to die anyway. You want to save your Tekkathal. You can pay the 3 mana or however you want to do that, and then remove some loyalty counters from some of your planeswalkers to make this guy indestructible. That way it's a little bit easier to rebuild. Always nice to have indestructible on some of your creatures. Now I'll go over some of the draw in the deck. Since we're sacrificing a lot of creatures, I threw in Dark Prophecy, black for an enchantment. Whenever a creature you control dies, you draw a card and lose 1 life. Not too much to say there. It doesn't say non-token, so we're making our tokens off our planeswalkers. We're stacking them to make them even bigger. Then you make more tokens, then you sacrifice more. So a lot of sacrifice things in this deck. So Dark Prophecy is going to be drawing us a lot of cards. I like that one a lot. Azuri, Stalker of Spheres up next. 2 green and a blue for a 3/3 Phyrexian Elf Warrior. When Azuri, Stalker of Spheres enters the battlefield, you may pay 3 if you do proliferate twice. If you have the extra mana, and you're going to pay 7 basically for the casting cost of this and the 3. So if you do, might as well use it. But the real kicker for this guy is whenever you proliferate, draw a card. So now it's tap, sacrifice a creature, proliferate, and draw a card every time you're going to do that with your commander. Super strong. I like that one. Another interesting draw option here. Kaido, Dancing Shadow, 2 blue and a black for a 3 loyalty planeswalker. Says whenever 1 or more creatures you control deal combat damage to a player, you may return 1 of them to its owner's hand. If you do, you may activate loyalty abilities of Kaido twice this turn rather than once. So the +1 on this guy, up to 1 target creature can't attack or block until your next turn. That's good protection. Also has the 0 draw a card, which is fantastic. And the -2, which also you can use right away because that's 3 loyalty. Create a 2/2 colorless drone artifact creature token with Death Touch, and when this creature leaves the battlefield, each opponent loses 2 life and you gain 2 life. Every single ability on this planeswalker is just fantastic. If you need blockers, you got it. If you want cards, you got it. If you want to make sure something can't attack you, you got it. If you want to activate these abilities twice, you got it. This guy has got you for 4 mana. This is a really strong planeswalker in this deck. Next up, I'll go over some of the ramp in the deck. Since we are running mostly creatures, I didn't run that many instant and sorcery speed ramp spells such as Cultivate and those kind of things. So I put in a lot of the typical mana dorks, you know, the Llanowar Elves, Finhorn Elves, that kind of thing. So I threw in Elvish Archdruid, 1 green for a 2/2 Elf Druid. Other elf creatures you control get +1/+1, and it says tap, add green for each elf you control. Seeing as how most of our mana dorks are elves, I think just tapping to add a green for the Elvish Archdruid itself is worth it on its own, but we also have some planeswalkers in the deck that can make elves, such as Freyalise, Llanowar's Fury, 3 green for a 3 loyalty planeswalker, +2, create a 1/1 green elf druid creature token with tap, add green, so that's even more mana, and then that also bumps up our Archdruid. The -2, destroy target artifact or enchantment, so that's removal as well, and the -6, draw a card for each green creature you control. Seeing as how a lot of the tokens we're making from the Primal Hunter and some of the other planeswalkers are green, that's just fantastic value on this guy all around. Super strong in this deck. Similarly, I got Tyvar Kell, 2 green for a 3 loyalty planeswalker. Elves you control have tap, add black, which helps out your other colors. A lot of the things in the deck tap for green, so having your elves also be able to tap for black is super helpful. The +1, put a +1/+1 counter on up to 1 target elf, untap it against Death Touch till on turn. The 0 is what we're going for here. Create a 1/1 green elf warrior creature token, which is then a mana dork, so super strong there. The -6, you get an emblem with whenever you cast an elf spell, it gains haste until on a turn and you draw 2 cards. So that one's not as good as an ultimate as the Freyalise is, but I still love that it gives your elves the tap for black and it creates elves on its own. Last but not least, I'm going over some of the utility in the deck like I usually do, just cards that are really good at pushing the deck forward, but it doesn't really fit into some of the other categories. So first up, in any black and green planeswalker deck, you're going to have to run Carth the Lion, 2 green and a black for a 3/5 human warrior. Whenever Carth the Lion enters the battlefield or a planeswalker you control dies, that's the big one. If someone kills your planeswalkers, you get this ability, which is look at the top 7 cards of your library. You may reveal a planeswalker card from among them and put it into your hand, put the rest on the bottom in a random order. Also, Planeswalker loyalty abilities you activate cost an additional +1 to activate. This is just a slam dunk in this deck. I actually like this commander so much, I thought about building it a couple times, but again, with the budget thing, I didn't find enough to make this deck work that let budget Planeswalkers be an option like this deck is. So I really like him in a Xavier Sal Planeswalker deck. He's really cool. Another super interesting one that came out this year, all the talent series, but the one I put in this deck is the Liliana's Talent. Black for an aura, enchant Planeswalker. Enchanted Planeswalker has -8. Put all creature cards from all graveyards onto the battlefield under your control. Full stop. That's a Rise of the Dark Realms effect on a 2-mana enchantment. Also, whenever a creature deals damage to the enchanted Planeswalker, you get to destroy that creature. So it makes it really hard for them to kill this. However, I don't think you'd even use this until you got a Planeswalker up to that 8 loyalty, which shouldn't be that hard because we do have some 7 loyalty Planeswalkers such as Arlen, Voice of the Pack, 4 green for a 7 loyalty Planeswalker. Each creature you control that's a wolf or werewolf enters the battlefield with an additional +1/+1 counter on it. You can -2 it to create a 2/2 wolf. So that's just really good to make tokens in our deck. But say we play our Arlen, we sacrifice a creature from another Planeswalker to proliferate, it goes up to 8. You cast another 2 mana, so that's 8 mana total. It's a lot, but it's not unheard of in a green deck to play the Liliana's Talent, immediately -8 it, and then you basically Rise of the Dark Realms, get all of your opponent's creatures and your creatures out of your graveyard to the battlefield. That's a pretty good way to win. So unless somebody has some instant speed removal or a counterspell for it, that's just insane value. I really like that one a lot. Another interesting one here, I got Marin of Clan Neltoth, 2 green and a black for a 3/4 human shaman. Whenever another creature you control dies, you get an experience counter, which is going to be happening all the time. It's not non-token. You know, we're sacrificing a bunch of creatures, so we're going to have a lot of experience counters. At the beginning of your end step, however, choose target creature card in your graveyard. If that card's mana value is less than or equal to the number of experience counters you have, you return that to the battlefield. Otherwise, you get to just put it in your hand. So if you have something that's really high up that you can't exactly put on the battlefield yet, you at least just get to put it back in your hand and then you can cast it later. You know, we don't have too many creatures in the deck, probably have a few less than the amount of Planeswalkers we have, but some of the creatures in the deck, such as like, you know, Techathal or, you know, Flux Channeler or whatever, that's really going to solidify our game plan. If they happen to die, which more than likely they will because they're extremely strong, Marin can get them out of the graveyard for us. Obviously, we're playing Planeswalkers, so protecting them is a really important aspect of the deck. Obscuring Haze, 2 and a green for instant. If you control a commander, you may cast a spell without paying its mana cost, and you get to prevent all damage that would be dealt this turn by creatures your opponents control. That includes damage to your Planeswalkers, not just to yourself, like some of the other fogs do. I love this one. It dropped down to $1.25, so it's super budget nowadays. Definitely include this in your Planeswalker deck, I think. Speaking of protection, Savitri, Dragon Master, 2 blue and a black for a 4 loyalty Planeswalker, +1. Until your next turn, creatures can't attack you or Planeswalkers you control unless their controller pays 2 life for each of those creatures. So it's like a ghostly prison, but you're paying life instead of mana, so that's also really good. -3, search your library for a dragon card, reveal it, put it in your hand, then shuffle. Don't have any dragons, I don't believe, so we don't need that. With the -7, destroy all non-dragon creatures. I believe this is the only quote-unquote board wipe that I threw in the deck. I just like the +1 ability a lot. I think it's nice to have a little bit of protection for your Planeswalkers. This one's kind of an iffy one. Last but not least, I got a newer card here. I just thought of it right as I was putting this deck together. I was like, oh man, historic. We're in a historic theme because we're casting Planeswalkers and Planeswalkers are legendary. So I typed in a little Scryfall search and I found the perfect card for this deck, the 6th Doctor. 4 green, blue for a 3/3 Time Lord Doctor. It has Time Lord's Prerogative. Whenever you cast a historic spell, copy it, except the copy isn't legendary. This ability only triggers once each turn. Oh my god, this is so freaking cool. So casting any of your Planeswalkers on your turn, the first one anyway, you get a second version of it, except it's not legendary, so you get to have both of them around. This card is fantastic in any Planeswalker deck, even I think on its own, a Simic Super Friends deck. This could be a pretty good commander for that deck if you were looking to build one. So that's pretty much all I got for this deck. I cannot believe how fun this looks, and just for a budget of around 65 bucks, it looks like right now, this is extremely cheap for a Super Friends deck. You know, most of the decks that I've looked at in the past, they're pushing $100, $200 because a lot of the Planeswalkers are just so expensive. But for this one, a lot of the cheap ones actually funnel into the build that we're going for here with sacrificing the tokens, and then you proliferate, and then you can get some crazy ultimates off for some of your Planeswalkers. So I'm 100% going to be building this one in paper, just in a matter of time. I already ordered some new decks lately, so I have about 3 new ones from the past couple months that I'm kind of tweaking and stuff. So I'm not going to be building this one right away, but I will get around to this one. I just love the idea of it, especially on a 3-mana commander. It's just so cool. So if you guys want to see the full deck list that I put together, I have an Architect link down in the description. Go ahead, feel free to subscribe, comment down below, or leave a like if you like my content and you want me to continue to make deck techs and Magic videos in general. So thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate all the support I've been getting lately. I'll see you guys in the next one. All right, take care.